Well, the tree is up, but the snow or rain, or maybe even the temps, are keeping you inside. Time to do some holiday baking. This annual sweet tradition can leave some of us flustered, but does not have to.
That's right. You've got the pies, the cookies, the cakes. The holidays often do include making so many treats to enjoy and to share, of course.
Now, of course, one of the most important ingredients for success, some expert help. So we called on our friend, food blogger, and storage expert, Jerry James Stone. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you guys too. Thanks for having me.
Looking very festive. I love the shirt, even though I'm not a fan of eggnog, but that's okay.
I'm ready.
You are ready. Often the holiday baking means buying ingredients we just don't normally use, and they wind up going to waste. So how can we cut down on that, you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right. It's buying ingredients you don't normally use because people are, they're making their favorite recipes or they're maybe trying new recipes. And there's a lot of ways you can kind of see if what you already have is good to go. You can test like your baking soda, your baking powder, try to pick recipes where you're using similar ingredients across the board that can help in the waste reduction too.
Now, two of the ingredients, and you already mentioned it, that can kind of confuse people are baking soda and baking powder. There's a difference. What goes where?
They are. So baking soda is like 3 times more powerful than baking powder. And baking soda, if you remember from those grade school volcanoes, right, that like it just reacts to acid. Where baking powder is really a factor of heat. It reacts when you're cooking it. So you can't really interchange them. That's one of the things that people usually think you can do. And you're probably going to ruin your recipe if you try. But they are both very important. Sometimes you use both in a recipe and you can easily test them to see if they're still active. They don't go bad. They actually just lose their potency over time. So you can easily test them, just like that volcano. Add some baking soda to a little bit of acid, like lemon juice or vinegar. You can see if it bubbles and it works. Add that baking powder to a little bit of hot water. If it bubbles, it's still good to go. So that way you don't ruin a recipe by using an inactive ingredient.
Yeah, I put that baking soda in the cookies to help them give a little rise, right? Let's talk about chocolate, my favorite. What do we need to know before we start baking with chocolate? And can we really eat the chocolate chips, when they turn that little ashen white?
Yeah, you can. They're completely safe to eat. Unless your chocolate chips smell bad or look moldy, that's obviously you want to toss those out. But if they just have a white coating on it, that's actually called the chocolate boom. And so it's 2 different things. It could be the cocoa fat in the chocolate sort of separating and coming to the surface and crystallizing. Or if you're storing your chocolate chips in a moist environment, sorry for using that word, but like if you're storing in that sort of environment, it could be pulling out the sugar and causing the same sort of reaction. But even though it's not attractive, they're still completely safe to eat.
That's good to know. I had no idea. I toss those things all the time, so nice to know we can keep them. Well, there's so many different kinds of flour, right? And different recipes seem to call for different ones. Why can't we just use all-purpose?
Well, you can to a degree use all-purpose. Really when it comes to flours, you're kind of talking about how finely ground it is or how much like gluten, that protein is in the flour. So if you're baking a bread, you want it to be a little bit more chewy. Or if you're using, a pie crust, you might want to use all-purpose because you don't want that to be chewy. The main thing with flour is that it lasts about a year stored in a dry, cool place. But if you put it in the freezer or the fridge, it actually can last up to 2 years. Where you really get into trouble is if you're using whole grain flours, like a whole wheat, because those still have so much of the plant in it, the oils and all that is still there, that can go rancid really, really fast. So those flours turn on you really quickly, whereas the more processed white ones will last a little bit longer.
Yeah, I use almond flour and I keep it in the fridge. Keep it a little bit
Very
longer.
good.
Okay, how do we soften up that brick of brown sugar? It just gets so clumpy and hard to work with.
It does. Brown sugar, unlike white sugar, has all that molasses in it from the sugar cane, and that's what's drying out, causing it to get really firm. And so there's a couple different things you can do. A couple days before you're going to use it, throw in a slice of white bread. The moisture from that bread, it might not seem like much, but it'll actually soften that brown sugar over those few days. Or if you're really in a pinch, you can actually toss it in the microwave just with a wet paper towel, 10 seconds at a time until it's nice and soft and ready to use. You want to make sure that you don't melt it. But those 2 ways can actually soften the brown sugar. Sugars last indefinitely. They don't go bad. So that brown sugar, even though it might be brick hard, is still good to use.
Wow, look at that. See, look at these tips we're getting. Jerry, I have to ask you this. I've seen folks use a baking powder or baking soda. I can't remember which one, but you kind of just put it in the fridge and you hang it out there. What is that? Does that actually do something?
Yeah, baking soda. So that's baking soda. So it's kind of funny because baking powder actually has baking soda in it, even though they're not interchangeable. But baking soda, you can put in the fridge to absorb any sort of like, bad fridge odors, So if you're having a stinky fridge problem, baking soda is great for that. You just don't want to use in cooking afterwards. If you put it in the fridge for deodorizing, do not bake with it afterwards.
Makes perfect sense. Well, Jerry James Stone, thanks again so much for joining us. Time to grab those aprons and do some baking.
Yeah, I did some baking the other day, as a matter of fact. I made my almond butter chocolate chip cookies.
Ellie brings in some of these treats every now and then, and I have to say,
they're not too bad for healthy, right?
Yeah,
So if you need some hacks and snacks to get you through the holidays and beyond, you can check out Jerry James Stone on YouTube. And if you're looking for some vegan options that can save you money, along with ways to be a little more friendly to the environment, follow Jerry on Twitter.